try to deny its existence, although we know that no matter how long we live, it's so close to us. At any time it knocks on our doors. Some people claim there is no death, even when souls part bodies. They think we exist in our deeds and our ghosts. First, let's discuss the incarnation of spirits to reveal the mysteries that lots of people have deluded, not because it doesn't exist, but for their incapability of explaining them. The reincarnation. We often hear at different times and places about people who have experienced a psychological condition, a trauma, or an accident on their heads that turns them to another person's, as speaking a language and suddenly after what happened speaking another language, forgetting his personality and name. In most cases have paradoxes, and we do not know what the secret is. The question here is this a reincarnation of spirits, or is this the soul itself? And here are some of these situations. The first case is an Arabian case in Golan, Syria, about a 3-year-old boy who was said to be murdered, and his soul showed how he was killed in details. His family wanted to make sure of his words, because the situation was weird to them in all ways. 4 years later, they found the axe that was used to hit him. Later, the boy took them to the person who killed him. It is worth mentioning that this child was born with a tattoo on his head where he was hit. Jemmy, the young child. He had fear of water and seas, but he was obsessed with the Titanic ship, and he used to draw it many times in all its cases. He used to narrate events on the ship, and he used to mention some faults in the construction, claiming it was the reason for the sinking. He said that the ship had to be built of steel and not of iron. He also recounted the many events that took place on the ship, so they brought him a toy in the form of the Titanic ship design, and they got surprised that he was aware in full details of all the corridors and rooms of the ship. They knew from his words that he was personifying an engineer called Thomas Angelus, and that he was an Irish ship designer who helped in designing the Titanic ship. He had already recommended that the ship should be built of steel instead of iron, and he died drowning with the Titanic victims. City, a famous Egyptian realistic story that you can search for it yourself. Dr. Zay Hawass wrote an article in Al-Ahram newspaper about it while he was working with her when he was young. He was impressed by her abilities to read hieroglyphics and with her information about the science of exploration excavation. In his article, he said that one day she visited them and had lunch with them. She said that her father used to believe she was crazy and sent her to many psychiatrists. She left England when she was young, came to Egypt and worked in Giza with the famous Egyptian Egyptologist Salim Hassan. She married an Egyptian man and gave birth to her son, Siti. She achieved a lot after working in the same temple she used to live in as a Pharaonic woman. She revealed to them some archaeological sites and showed them the gardens of the temple of Pharaoh Seti first. She also showed them a private library full of books from all civilizations below the temple of Seti. Furthermore, she showed them the king's tunnel under the garden of the temple. All this has caused controversy for many people. It's possible to hear a lot of stories about these cases. Some people said it was karma, others thought it was the state of reincarnation, as the Druze. While some believe that a man can live more than one life, the question is, can a human live in another body? And is it possible to happen actually? Is there really something called karma, and is there reincarnation? What is the spiritual interpretation of the cases we have mentioned? Is it possible to be real, or it is just a myth? Many questions are asked, but all the answers refer to the soul and what it is. This is what we are going to discuss in our article titled, "The Soul is Far from Any Myth." And they ask you about the soul. Say, the soul is of the affair of my Lord, and mankind have not been given of knowledge except a little. A small verse, but with a deep meaning. The soul is of God, and it consecrates the command of God. It is the entity that brings you into life, and in every creature. Everything that moves has an entity and a soul of God's command. If man knows the soul, he can control any other entity on earth. He can control the rotation of the earth, or make mass deaths, or mass births. The soul secrets must not be given in order to preserve the life cycle and to keep everything going by God's command. The soul is the link that makes you close to God and believe that God is closer to you from your own vein, just because your soul is from Him. And if God lets us know the entity and the soul, God will not be the eminent, as He called Himself, because it would be able to feel God Almighty excessively. If we know the soul, we can control the living and the dead, so humans cannot know what the soul is. Speaking about the soul, we must give it its divine value and its rightful position. Only God has the ability to see the soul. It is the science above all human sciences. Whatever our knowledge of the earth sciences is, yet we have known a little so far. The difference between the soul and the ethereal body. After the discovery of a worm called planaria, the discovery has sparked people's controversy. As if you bring this worm and cut it into 4 or more pieces, each piece will turn into a worm. Many atheists used to prove that the soul is just a mess. The question was, how does not the soul come out of the worm? And can the soul be divided into pieces? They did not meditate. They did not realize that the soul is much more than an engine of every living being. The soul is the source of life for everything, and we cannot know its secrets because these secrets belong to God only. If you descend underground, you will see the bacteria, a living being derived from the divine entity. If you go down the caves, you see different creatures made by God. Some of them are known, others are still unknown to us. They all derive the source of their lives from the divine entity, the indivisible entity. Yet, we do not know its name or its place. The soul is at every point, every dimension, every time and every place. We can only meditate, and we do not know anything about it. How can it wander in the earth? We do not know how it moves. We do not know any details about it, as God only knows everything about it. God is closer to us even than ourselves, and God knows everything about us, yet we know nothing. There is no power except through God, who can only control the soul. Questions abounded about the soul after medicine knew Chimera. Many of us confuse the soul with the ethereal body and call it spiritual body because it's intangible. Spirituality is esoteric science. Why did God create the Quran? Quran is an Arabic word that means a constant companion. Does the Quran have a soul? The Quran, or the ether, is an integral part of you. The life of you and your Quran are part of your entity and soul. The Chimera, an ancient Greek myth in the spiritual sciences. Chimera is a famous creature in ancient Greek mythology. It is made of 3 animals. Chimera consists of a lion's head, a goat's body, and a snake's tail. The Greek civilization used the chimera to describe a monster that kills children. There are many legends and fairy tales, including true and untrue ones. The true ones are that chimera describes some humans that we will explain them to you in details. In 1950, the world began to pay attention because of a Danish player who represented her country in the 1950 Olympics. When it was discovered that her body cells were male cells, so her name was omitted, and the medal was withdrawn, and her innocence was proven after her death. After examining her body, many researchers have found out that in some cases the embryo in the uterus is made of 2 fertilized ova, and they become 2 embryos after the fetuses are formed, either to remain in the body and they became 2 non-identical twins, or that one of the 2 embryos disappear completely and the mother's body absorbs the cells of the other embryo with no symptoms felt by the mother, and this situation is called vanishing twin syndrome. The third possibility is that one embryo feeds on the other one and merge with the other embryo with its tissues and DNA to merge into one body. If one of them is male and the other is female, some of its cells are female and the others are male. It is also possible that some of the organs are male and the others are female, as what happened with the Danish player, when no one was able to determine whether it was a male or a female. Also, the body can have 2 blood groups, and it can affect the shape, so that one eye color differs from the other, and this does not happen to humans, but to animals, and this condition is called a chimera. A Danish study confirmed that 1/3 of humans are chimera, and 100 cases of chimera have been detected and confirmed. They were discovered and recorded in the medical history. The cases were attributed to some autoimmune diseases such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and myasthenia, and most of them confirmed that chimera is the cause of facial asymmetry, such as eye color difference or disorientation of some organs. Here, modern medicine began to ask, does the chimera have 2 souls? This was the physical meaning of chimera. What is the meaning of spiritual chimera? A scientist in the Soviet Union discovered something new. Simon Clarion and his wife invented a very high-speed imaging device that can convert the non-electrical phenomenon into an electrical phenomenon, so that it could be imaged. This device is called the Clarion device, named after its inventor. Using this device, an ethereal shape similar to a tree leaf was photographed. Then the tree leaf was pulled and cut at a sharp angle. It was then rephotographed to show that the ethereal form of the paper is still complete, as it is, and that it was not affected by the process of cutting that occurred to the leaf, or actually to its outer physical form. A lot of scientists and doctors were interested in these issues, and the American philosopher William James, who conducted the research on 285 amputees. He said that the feeling of the amputated organ remains after the amputation for different periods. The 70-year-old man has been feeling the presence of his amputated thigh since he was 3 years old, with the same strength and clarity at the other thigh. The Italian scientist Ernesto Pisano discussed this issue in one of his books entitled Phenomena of Double Organs. He says that the feeling of a ghost organ can sometimes be complete, other times it's less complete. Here we understand that every physical body has an ethereal body. The ethereal body exists even if the physical part is detracted. It does not detract from the ethereal body, and it remains complete even if the part of the physical body has been detracted. Hence we know that Chimera people have a double ethereal body. A Zuhar person is a Chimera person with a double ethereal body and a Korean. His abilities are higher, his spirituality is higher, and his insight is stronger than any natural person. All of this is just because of the phenomenon of Chimera that occurs since his birth. The symptoms of a Zuhar person are